Hey everybody, Brian Good here on Storm Talk on this Tuesday afternoon. Lots to discuss, including the air quality to the heat, humidity, thunderstorms, and I'm going to give you guys a preview of some of the early data coming in for August and parts of September. All right, first off, the radar trends. Quiet now. We've had some cloud cover around. Mainly small areas of cumulus have been trying to develop. One or two of these could grow into a thunderstorm, brief thunderstorm. But there's very little wind at all to talk about. But at the moment, in fact, got calm conditions at the airport when it comes to wind. But this is purely just the heat rising from the ground that can build the cloud up enough to maybe produce a thunderstorm. But the air even above us is relatively warm, so you have to have an imbalance. You got to have warm air going into cold air, and that's how you get the clouds to build up and become thunderstorms. So if you have warm air blowing up into warm air, the cloud just doesn't do much. It's kind of pathetic looking cloud in a way, which is good if you want a dry forecast, but it keeps it hot as well. And that's kind of the scenario we are facing for this afternoon. Here's the wider setup, and I'm going to give you a broad overview, though, how things are looking. The ridge of high pressure is centered right over in this area. A lot of heat. This is the ring of fire, as we call it, that kind of stretches all the way through. The Plain States dips down. Actually, it's a little more of a dip in our area, probably more towards St. Louis and Nashville, and then to the Carolinas, is the pattern here of the influence. All right, so we do have stable air across Canada in the upper portions of the Ohio Valley. We've got the transition zone, which is pretty much just up against us, and then we've got the full-on heat as you head into the deep south and the Plain States. And that's kind of how this is a typical summertime setup, really. Question is, the transition zone, we need to either be all the way in it or get away from it. And that is the only way we're going to really have a good handle on the forecast details between now and the weekend. Because if we teeter back and forth, it makes the forecast a challenge. Because depending on which side we are on will determine if it's hot and dry and humid and quiet on the radar to a active thunderstorm severe weather scenario. So, and that's unfortunately what I think is going to end up happening. We're going to be going back and forth here because the shape, as you'll see in a moment, of the ridge is more of a circle. As we head toward the weekend, it's going to become more of an east-west boundary through the area, or east-west zone, and that's going to create some problems here as we transition to that. So, air quality alert, if you saw my tweet earlier that went out, we do have one for Louisville area starting tomorrow. This will likely be extended the rest of the week if we avoid thunderstorms and into the weekend. So, let's talk about the heat. It's 90 right now in Louisville. You factor humidity. Feels like 95 here, 100 in Salem, 101 in Bedford, Indiana, 104 into Owensboro. Once we hit 105, or at least the potential to hit 105 for 3 hours consecutively or longer, that's when we talk about heat advisory criteria. We're not to that level yet today. Don't see us being there tomorrow. But toward Friday and Saturday, maybe even Sunday, we will get into that zone where we have to watch that potential. So let's talk about the thunderstorm chances first, because I do see some problems in the next, I would say, 36 hours or so. First off, here's RPM showing this afternoon. Again, one or two of these clouds that can bellow up may happen. Can't rule that out. Keeping the rain chance 10% or lower. Tonight looks quiet. Tomorrow, we do have slightly cooler air all off tomorrow, so it's not a lot, but it is a little more of that cooler air in the upper Ohio Valley. It does work its way in. So we're going to be in that transition type period a little more tomorrow. Got to watch out for a few pop-ups. At this point, I think our rain chance stands, I think, at 20%. I'm going to analyze that this afternoon. Likely we'll still keep it there, but it will be likely higher than the 10% today. And it may not be dramatic. I know 10 to 20%, but it could mean a big difference in whether or not you get a thunderstorm tomorrow. But here's the interesting part of the setup, and it's not going to be tomorrow during the day. It's going to be later tomorrow night towards sunrise Thursday. This is where we do have a little piece of energy, a little ripple that is going to fly in that transition zone across Illinois and Indiana. Now, the strength of the ridge at that point is crucial because there's potential for thunderstorms to react to that little ripple. We begin to see signs of that as early as, I would say, sunrise Thursday morning across central areas of Indiana. But watch what happens. Just like we saw the other day with that outflow, that crazy-looking shelf cloud. Very similar setup here as we into Thursday morning. It blossoms and produces this huge outflow that spreads across wave country through midday on Thursday. That will knock us down temperature-wise, as you see there. into the 70s, although we do recover back in the 90s before the sun sets. Relatively stable, though. Got to monitor that potential for Wednesday night and Thursday. In fact, the GFS doesn't really show it, but the Canadian does. And it brings it down around sunrise, showing that little, it's not exactly detailed as the RPM, but it is more of a U-shape flow that blossoms out. So right now we got two model sources, and the Canadian really does fairly well in our area this time of year. And the RPM, and the HER model, I can't see that far out, so we don't know what the HER model says. And the NAM model, I'm trying to recall what it said. I don't recall it picking up that detail. I'll look at that again. I got so many models I'm looking at. But the Euro is one I really want to take a glance at, and it just started running about 30 seconds ago, so plenty of time. But you see the bus potential on highs. If we don't recover, just like yesterday, we didn't get a chance to recover. We got up to 87 after the morning MCS outflow type deal that came through here yesterday. Same scenario. If we don't recover, we'll be in the 80s more than likely Thursday versus mid-90s. Big difference when it comes to the forecast potential here. So stay tuned for changes for especially Thursday morning and midday. There could be some changes to that part of the forecast. Looking ahead, here's the GFS showing the ridge, though. These are heights, these numbers. Don't pay attention to the number. What you need to know is when you get to 594, you're talking about 92 to 94 degrees. Once you get to 597 heights, you're talking more like 94 to about 90, potentially up to about 98 for a high temperature, if not hotter. In our area, that's usually what it translates to. So we're generally in the 92 to 94 range as we headed toward Friday. And as we enter the weekend, we're in that, still in that zone. Could we see a pocket or two, especially in the city, heat out effect that could exceed that? Yeah. I think we got 96 in now. I think 96 is good. I know a lot of forecasters see this a lot, and they want to go gun-ho and go straight into 100 degrees. Got to be careful with that. In our area in Wave Country, we've seen that many times. It is hard to get to 100 degrees with a lot of green on the ground like we have. We've got to be in a drought scenario to get that hot. So I am really skeptical of century digit numbers, or triple digit numbers, I should say, for this pattern. I just don't really, I'm not buying into it yet. Okay, so with that ridge becoming flat, you saw it was more east-west. It's because there is a low that's going to track across Canada that is going to work its way through the northeast part of the country. It is going to drag a front in this shape over the weekend, and the front will be to our north. And as the Canadian shows here, as we head into probably Monday, not so much Sunday. So the weekend looks dry and only pop-up thunderstorms, but as we head into Monday, all bets are off because that front will be so close to us. We've got to increase the rain chance Monday and perhaps even into Tuesday. That then will show the trend as we head toward August. At that point, we'll be closing in on the final days of July into August, and it's showing repeated rounds, these little troughs, very familiar pattern, except there is a southeast ridge, which has not been as prevalent this season, showing up that the heat tries to push back again into the western part of the country. And speaking of that, here's the latest CFS model. This is a Long Range America model that looks into August, and it's showing that a cooling trend will likely develop across the area where the heat wave is taking place, which would influence us August into September. Seeing signs of that, I will say that I looked at the Long Range Euro, which I cannot post, but it is showing repeated waves, just like we just went through this summer season, repeated waves of cold fronts and cool shots all the way through at least mid-September. Early September, I should say, excuse me. Late October, or late August, I'll get it right. Late August, early September, these repeated waves. Now, right after the first few days of September, there are signs that we may see the heat build back in again. And we have seen that the past couple of years. As we get closer to the very final days of summer and approach fall, we begin to heat up. We saw a stretch of 90s, had a heat wave in September last year. So, interesting to see that possibly repeating itself. We'll dive more into that when we get closer. That's it for now, guys. Stay tuned for changes in the forecast, and stay cool out there.